who are working against extremism if you have resources. And I say, just give $1 for every Muslim who's not an extremist.
Okay.
Give it to me or give it to any one of us, and you will see a change.
All right,
Fifth,
last
fifth,
point. Last
yes,
point.
and this
Okay.
is the one that everybody can do. Reclaim the ummah for peace and justice, and replace it by reporting criminal activity in your own community. Don't be afraid to do that.
All right, gentleman in the front row. You, sir.
My question is for Mrs. Khan. You say that 90% of extremists are they're extremists because they're looking for political freedom, right? So Mr. Hussein said that in Saudi Arabia, the center of the Islamic world, we have people selling magazines calling for the death of non-believers. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that there is the truth of Islam has been hijacked by people who have a distorted view of Scripture. And I believe that there's work to be done in that area.
And what would you do about that kind of literature being sold in Saudi Arabia?
I think that we really need to take a serious look at that, because we in the United States...
What does that mean, take a serious look at it?
We have suffered from that in the United States, because the verse says non-believers, and then in parentheses it says Jews and Christians. That's not a non-believer to me.
You say that every year millions of Muslims go to Hajj and we walk away silently. There's no protest against the fact that the Saudis have totally demolished our heritage in Mecca and Medina. There's no protest about the fact that they impose a certain sexual segregation in the Haram in Medina and in the Haram in Mecca. I feel collectively we're responsible for what's going on in our heartland, from where we send our ambassadors on a yearly basis, unless we challenge it right there.
Okay, well, lady in the second row, we'll take a question from you, please.
Good evening. My question is to Mr. Arsalan. When the Danish government eventually met with the Muslims in Denmark, they chose only to meet with the modern Muslim. Isn't some of the extremism in Islam are the results of frustration born out of the West's desire to have a dialogue only on its own terms? Thank you.
That's actually a very good question. On the day the Danish cartoon controversy broke, I personally met with both the Danish and Norwegian ambassadors to the United States to voice my opposition to it. And of course, during the time, the newspaper was hiding behind the free press argument, but we all learned later through the Guardian newspaper in the United Kingdom that they had turned down similar cartoons lampooning the Prophet Jesus. And so this was an incendiary, insightful message that they were trying to send to the Muslim world, and unfortunately, some Muslims around the world took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. And that's where we saw a firebombing of a Kentucky Fried Chicken in Beirut, a bombing of a Pizza Hut in Islamabad, Pakistan. And the difficulty that I had, you know, I go from CNN to BBC to Al Jazeera explaining these situations, and the first question that I get, and it's a question that I think all of you should think about, is that what about the virulently anti-Semitic cartoons that regularly appear in Muslim newspapers around the world? So if we are going to condemn racism, we should not only condemn Islamophobia, we have to condemn racism in all of its forms, especially within our own Muslim ummah, whether saying that Arabs are better than non-Arabs. We have to be consistent in our message, because otherwise to the rest of the world, we're just seen as duplicitous Muslims who only cry foul when something goes wrong with us, and not when our people do something wrong.
All right, Moez Masood.
There are efforts, they are very substantial, they represent Orthodox Islam, we need to get more media light onto them. Until the media is on them, the media light, we currently are going to have people believing the other image in the media, hence your statistics.
All right, we're going to take a question from the gentleman in the second row, please.
Yes, hi, my question goes to the opposition. Why don't the Muslims, like yourself, leading agencies that promote non-killing, go as far as maybe halfway around the world to Pakistan and stop like schools there from teaching children at a young age that maybe if you perform jihad, that will get you straight to heaven? Why don't you go as far as to halfway around the world to change it, and not only stick to the West? I mean, it takes a lot of measures to stop extremism, because you said yourself it's a very deep problem.
Well,
I guess I'm headed to Pakistan next. Thank you. My work is very extensive. I do go all over the place, but I will take your proposition very seriously.
Yes, and I would like to add to that no, we are. People are flying there. We're getting rid of this literature. Those efforts that have been unknown are coming out now. And it's because of them that I'm saying we're not failing. And hopefully we will succeed maybe the next Doha debate.
Moise talked about perception. We all know that perception is reality. When one-fourth of a nation thinks that you are too dangerous to live next door to, it is quite clear that we are not succeeding in getting our message across. It is quite clear that we are not succeeding in getting our message across.
All right, Moise Masood.
For example, today, the Common Word message, which is an effort by 138 fully representative across the board Muslim scholars, leaders, are meeting with Christian leaders to commit to the fact that based on love thy God and love thy neighbor. That's just one effort today that no one knows anything about.
But if they don't know about it, does it make a difference?
Well, that's the thing. Then instead of saying we're failing, we can say, look, we haven't succeeded yet. Now let's tell people about all these other things and make orthodoxy mainstream.
All right, we're going to take the question from the gentleman up there.
Maybe Muslims are failing to combat extremism because they're combating their real enemies. America's problem is combating extremism. We're not suffering from extremism as America does.
Do you have a question?
So that's my comment. But I'm saying that what else should America do to combat extremism? This is the question, not what Muslims should do. Thank you.
Well, what America is doing is that we are going to elect a new president in 2009 that is not George W. Bush. Now, in the same light, in the same breath that I condemn Osama bin Laden, I have been the first one to condemn George W. Bush for all of his catastrophic policies that he's undertaken. And that's the thing. It's not like it's not the Bushian doctrine of you're either with us or you're against us. You know, most of the world, like we see all different colors of the rainbow here tonight. You know, we represent all different backgrounds, all different faiths. You know, we have lost this culture of humanity. We are a global community. We must, you know, if my brother commits, you know, an act that is wrong, I have the responsibility to call him out on that. But we are going to elect a new president in 2009.
Just on the back of what Arsalan has said, it's worth bearing in mind that, you know, for all of America's faults, that this problem started at home among us here in the Muslim East, and it's for us to sort out. And don't forget, going back 1400 years, our Prophet said to us, وَإِيَّاكُمْ بِالْغُلُوِ فِي الدِّينِ, that beware of extremism in your faith. So it's a reality that's always been there. And in the Quran, Allah talks about this religion being rahmatan lil alamin, or the carrier of this faith, the Prophet being a mercy to the world. So it's the onus is on us to sort out our houses, and rather than, you know, this Arabic phrase that I picked up in Damascus, لَوْمَ عَلَى الْآخَرِينَ, the blame on the others all the time. We've got to change that mindset, and unless we do that, we will continue to be the laughing stock of the world. Tonight is your chance to actually start the ball rolling in the opposite direction.
All right, I'm going to move on to a question from the gentleman in the third row there, please.
This is just for Brother Iftikhar. I think Muslims in America have lived in America for the last 18 years, and I think they're doing an awesome job. But to me, it seems like you're trying to have the people here today put in their minds very strongly that 25% of Americans who say that they don't like to live next to a Muslim. Don't you think those are just the people who regularly listen to people like Rush Limbaugh, Hannity, Michael Savage, all this media who has actually done the American people themselves, and I'm one of them myself, a disservice by trying to actually undo the good things that Muslims all over the world who are against extremism and terrorism are trying to do, and this is my question.
The heart of the matter that I was trying to get at is that 1 in 4 Americans, so we have about 350 people here tonight. What if 75 to 80 of them said that they do not want to live next to a Pakistani, or a Sudanese, or a Shia? Would we say that's an insignificant portion of this populace? 1/4 of a nation of 300 million is not something that can be ignored. And so we have to look at the magnitude of the problem. It's not 1 in 100, it's 1 in 4. So for 4 of us, if we were all Americans and non-Muslims, 1 of us wouldn't want you as a neighbor, and I find that problematic.
All right,
I do agree with that, but let me take it to the other side, because they are saying we are not failing.
We're just taking it to the other side.
Or the people at least. Okay, yeah. you take it from there.
Thank you. Don't ignore, but ask why. That's the whole point. Again, you want to get to the meat of the matter, we have to be very practical. The meat of the matter is going back to Orthodox Islam. The reason is that extremism is an idea. You can't get rid of it. You have to get rid of the idea itself. You can't just get rid of the act.
I totally agree with your prognosis to the situation that it's a return to Orthodox, classical, normative, traditional Islam. However, the big caveat is this, that we're up against a machine which functions in various countries known as the Saudi Embassy, Rabitat al-Alam al-Islami, which is pumping in millions of dollars over the last two, 3 decades, which we're not up against. Yes, I accept Azhar and Zaytuna, but we have to be open and say Medina University is doing a lot of damage, which may well be undoing much of the good work that Azhar and Zaytuna are doing out. So unless it's all well and good being positive, yes, but we've also got to be negative and say, there's the nub of the problem, guys. And unless we're open about that, I'm sorry, we're not thinking around the issue.
And I agree with you, and let me ask you, so who's doing more right now? The radicals doing the damage, or the Orthodox institutions who are doing the repairing? What do you think?
Right now the jury's out. It remains to be seen in 10 years' time which side wins.
Well, so therefore then this motion can't really be voted for.
Well, no, it can, because if you look at it, the radicals are the one who are getting, they're getting the airtime.
Well, again, but see, that takes us back to a non-representative sample with a loud voice.
But Moise, perception is reality. Hold on. The rest of the non-Muslim world is woefully undereducated and ignorant about Islam. And so when they see olive-skinned males with beards and turbans toting AK-47s talking about how they want to kill the infidels, they might not have any negative preconceptions about Muslims, but I assure you, once you see that on the evening broadcast every single night, you're going to start to think, maybe I don't want to be around these people.
Then put this orthodoxy on the broadcast every single night. That's right. On the broadcast every single night. That's right. That's what we're doing and calling for.
I think there's a major shift going on here, and that is why I said I think the era of extremism is over. And I'm not saying it's over. I'm saying it's over.
What's the difference?
Well, there's a graph.
What's the difference?
One's 3, one's 1.
It's a blip. It's waning. It's going down. This is why they are raising the ante.
Over means finished, whether you repeat it 3 times or say it once.
What I'm saying is that this is the first media.
The Arab prisons are full of extremists.
I know that.
Western intelligence is busy hunting these guys down, up and down the world. And you're telling me extremism's over?
Do you appreciate the efforts of tasheeh al-mafahim, the correction of understandings that happened with Jama'ah Islamiyya, renounced complete terrorism?
Absolutely.
What I was going to say...
And you still would draw a conclusion there is failure?
What I was going to say is I want to thank the Doha debates.
Yes?
This is the first time I'm actually on a forum like this. I've been cited in many media. I've been cited in almost 22 media outlets in the last 4 months. I'm saying this is the first time somebody has asked me to discuss this very issue. And I hope with the 200 million audience that you have, or whatever staggering number of audience that you have, that the world will begin to see the work that Muslims are doing. And I do really ask you to vote for this side. Because there are many of us doing this work, and you don't want to disempower us.
We're going to take a final question from the lady in the 4th row there. You have your hand up. That's you. Yes.
I was wondering, do you want us to apologize for all these statistics? Because I feel what you're trying to say is that we should apologize for what's going on, even though I think that by doing so, it's pretty much us taking the blame for what's going on.
What I'm trying to say is that unfortunately to people who are undereducated or ignorant about Islam, they see Islam as a monolith. They think all Muslims are Arabs, all Arabs are Muslims, vice versa. Complete fallacies about Islam. And I think that it is our duty to educate. And so when I quote statistics like this, I think that we are not doing enough in order to combat this miseducation, this misinformation, and Islamophobia, blatant Islamophobia that is going on.
Let me just put the question to Ed Hussein. Do you want Muslims to apologize?
Apology isn't enough. We need Muslims to rectify. We need Muslims to put an end to extremism. And it's not about apologizing and then everything's back to normal. It's about admitting that we have a problem. And I think that's where passing the motion in favor tonight puts our colors to the mast and says, Muslims in the heart of the Middle East, here in Doha, in Qatar, realize, recognize, admit that we have a deep, deep problem. And it's from this point onwards that we commit globally in the public space to solving it. And apologies, jolly good, but let's get beyond apologies and get to real action.
You wanted to come back on that?
Yeah, isn't it kind of like taking the blame, though? Because I know that roughly 2% of the 2 billion Muslims out there are the ones with these extremist views and stuff. But Like,
There's collective German guilt for the Holocaust 60 years later after it's happened. Demographics have taken collective guilt. I'm not saying that it is our responsibility, but it does become our responsibility that when